You could win a Nobel Prize tomorrow, cure a disease, climb Everest in flip-flops, and your coworker, Dave, the guy who sits 3 feet from you 5 days a week, will hear about it, nod, and immediately go back to thinking about what he wants for lunch. That's not an exaggeration, that's neuroscience. There's a well-documented phenomenon called the spotlight effect, studied extensively by psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky. When they put people in embarrassing t-shirts and sent them into a room full of strangers, the wearers assumed that roughly half the room noticed and remembered the shirt. The actual number? About 25%. And most of those people forgot within minutes. We are each walking around convinced we are the center of a stage that nobody is actually watching. And the moment that truly lands, not just as a fact you read, but as something you feel in your bones, something shifts. Something gets lighter. Something gets freer. That's what this video is about. If this sounds like something your brain needed to hear today, hit subscribe and drop a like. It genuinely helps more people find this stuff. So let's actually unpack what's happening here, because nobody cares sounds devastating on the surface. It sounds like rejection. It sounds cold. But here's the psychological reframe that changes everything. People are not ignoring you because you don't matter. They're ignoring you because they are drowning, completely consumed by their own mental loop, their own embarrassments, their own anxieties, their own version of the spotlight effect, pointing the beam right back at themselves. Psychologists call this egocentric bias. Our brains are wired, literally hardwired, to treat our own experiences as the center of the universe. It's not a character flaw, it's a factory setting. Which means everyone around you, your boss, your ex, your best friend, your parents, they are all living inside their own heads to an almost absurd degree. That passive-aggressive comment you've been replaying for 3 weeks, they forgot it the same afternoon. Here's a fun little fact that puts this in perspective. Research from Harvard found that people spend roughly 47% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they're currently doing. And the vast majority of that mental wandering, it's about themselves, their own problems, their own regrets, their own version of the spotlight effect, pointing the beam right back at themselves. So the math works out like this. You have spent years modifying your behavior, shrinking your personality, biting your tongue and playing it safe for an audience that is statistically not paying attention to you. That's wild when you actually stop and sit with it. Think about the last time you posted something and then spent the next 2 hours refreshing to see how people reacted, or the last time you walked into a room and immediately started calculating how you looked, how you spoke, whether people liked you. All of that mental energy spent managing a performance for a crowd that is simultaneously managing their own performance for you. It's like a theater where every single person in the building thinks they're the one on stage. This is sometimes called pluralistic ignorance, where everyone privately feels one thing but publicly performs another, because they assume everyone else feels differently. Nobody actually enjoys the awkward small talk, but everyone keeps doing it because they assume everyone else does. So what happens to a person who genuinely absorbs this truth? A few things, and they're not small things. First, decisions get faster and cleaner. One of the biggest reasons humans stall, procrastinate, and overthink is because we're running every choice through a filter of what will people think. When you stop expecting a harsh audience, that filter drops. You just decide. You just move. Second, failure loses its teeth. The only reason failure feels catastrophic is because we believe people are watching, judging, and keeping score. But they're not keeping score. They're barely keeping track of their own score. A failed attempt becomes feedback instead of humiliation, and feedback is just information you can use. Third, and this one is counterintuitive, your relationships actually improve. Because when you stop performing and start being real, the few people who respond to the real version of you, those connections become genuinely deep, not surface-level, edited, carefully managed relationships. Real ones. The loneliness that comes right before this realization, that quiet ache of feeling unseen, is actually your nervous system telling you that the version of yourself you've been showing people is not the version that needs to be seen. The real one is buried under years of people-pleasing and careful image management. And here's a slightly strange but very human fact. Studies on authentic self-expression consistently show that the more genuinely a person behaves, the more they are actually liked, not the performed version, the honest, weird, unpolished version. People can feel the difference, even when they can't name it. So where does this leave you practically? That thing you've been putting off because someone might laugh, they won't remember it by next Tuesday. That opinion you've been swallowing down at dinner tables and in group chats because it might make someone uncomfortable, the discomfort lasts about 11 seconds and then everyone moves on. That version of yourself you've been quietly building in private, the one with different values or strange interests or a direction that doesn't make sense to anyone in your immediate circle, that version has been waiting a long time for you to stop auditing it before it even exists. The only person who is consistently, reliably, unavoidably thinking about your life is you, which means you are both the only critic who matters and the only supporter you actually need. That's a lot of responsibility, but it's also a lot of freedom. So here's what I want to leave you with, and I'm genuinely curious about this, so please actually answer in the comments. What is one thing you've been holding back on because you were worried about what people would think? It doesn't have to be huge. Could be a creative project, a conversation, a change you've been sitting on. Drop it below, because I promise you, everyone reading the comments is too busy thinking about their own answer to judge yours. And if this video landed in a way that felt useful, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most useful thing we can do for another person is hand them their own freedom back. See you in the next one.